The top 100 agents are the best of the best, listing and selling more than any other agent in Australia.
Sold. Congratulations, sir. Well bought.
These are the practices, actions and beliefs of the most successful agents in Australian real estate. Raw, honest and completely uncut. Welcome to REB's Secrets of the Top 100 Agents.
Well, g'day everyone, it's Liam Garman here, editor of Real Estate Business, back today with another episode of the Real Estate Business podcast, and I'm joined by a man who needs no introduction. I wrote down your title as speaker, trainer and coach extraordinaire, Josh Phegan, because I think you do so much you don't do.
Yeah, but Liam, I'll take all of that. That's really lovely of you to say it, and I'm great to be here.
How's business going?
Look, I think things are really good. It's pretty amazing to watch what is actually happening across all different parts of Australia. They're telling me that houses are selling in under 8 days right now in Perth, and you've got other parts of the market that are just waking up, and we've got people that are doing a lot of auctions really quickly. So it's a great start to 26.
Now, I think it's before we clicked record,
yes.
You and I were reminiscing because you were one of my first ever guests on this podcast.
Yes,
I took over 12 months ago.
Congratulations!
Thank you. Yeah, we've topped our 1 year anniversary, and it's been pretty good. And I thought, what better time to get you back?
Yeah, great
back
to be
by
here.
popular demand because last year we had we had a great potty last year about habits setting yourself up for success.
Sure.
I thought I'd actually start off with maybe a little bit more of a. It's not controversial.
Sure.
But, maybe cutting through the fluff.
Mm-hmm.
When you started your career,
yeah, sure.
What was one bit of advice that you got which you wish you never received because it maybe wasn't as good as everyone told you it was?
I think the whole conversation is that the perception is the thing that everyone's actually coachable, and also too that people are ready. That's the other conversation, because sometimes the conversation's had well too early, and I think that that's a really hard thing to kind of get right, because as a coach you want everyone to be successful. So if someone's coming your way and going, hey, I've got a problem with XYZ, but are they actually open to what that change is going to require and the types of behaviors that they're going to need to do? And there's an old school saying that how do you be really successful? It's like a series of small decisions the right way every day. And how does a life go massively off track? A series of small decisions made the wrong way. And it's really small decisions. And so I think that that's probably a mistake that I probably made early on, is that I would walk into a room and have the assumption that people would be there. And that's why you would tend to say that people that go to a ticketed training event, where they're all paying for their own individual training, tends to have a higher amount of note taking than when someone gets a free ticket to an event or goes to a company event, if that makes sense, unless the company's got a really good culture about learning and growth. But it's also too understanding that literally things happen in people's lives. Hopefully they're exciting things like having a baby and getting married and doing all of those wonderful things. But unfortunately, there are a few tragedies and things that go on. And people can come out of those with an incredible level of resolve to live a better life, be a different person, change behaviors and want to shift it. And so you don't need to go through a life event for that to occur. You can actually just make a decision, but you got to want to go there. And I think that's kind of an interesting thing about learning how you want to learn and how you want to grow and being exposed. Yeah.
And that's a very good way of putting it. You have to want to change.
Yeah.
And
so why does change happen? Dissatisfaction? You're unhappy about something? Or you got a new vision? Hey, I'd like to do that. And I think over the break, many probably would have read Gilbert Anarka's new book, and he says, look, at the end of the day, pressure is a lifestyle and it's a privilege. And what you got to start thinking about is that pressure comes in one of three ways. Is pressure of expectation. Who puts expectations on you? Maybe your partner, maybe your boss, maybe you yourself. Literally someone puts pressure on you. If you go and get $1 million home loan, you got to have $6,000 in the bank at the end of the month to pay for that. That's pressure, isn't it? Pressure of scrutiny. I was very lucky. You get to go through things like the Australasian Auctioneering Championships. Other peers are going to judge whether or not you're a good auctioneer. That changes how you perform. And then the next one does that, then the pressure of consequence. We all do this. If you're going on holidays on Friday next week, mate, it has to be done by Friday, because else if it's not done by then, it's not going to be done at all. So learning how to apply pressure in a way and not shirking, I think, from the responsibility or shirking from the opportunity that scrutiny might actually present. But by making sure that, hey, I'm going to enter a situation where, hey, Liam, I'm going to do my listing presentation to you. Can you just watch it and then give me some feedback on what you think I could improve?
Yeah.
Oh, Josh, I don't really think you asked me much about what I do as a career, or you didn't really cotton on that I didn't want to pay a lot for advertising, or that I was a bit concerned, or that I had a job relocation and my mentor media was paying for my relocation costs and you didn't pick that up. And so, oh yeah, right. And I thought you were pretty serious and you didn't smile. Oh, sorry. And so, that's that whole thing is that you're only going to get better by receiving that feedback or absorbing that, or very directly going out there to go and build and master a skill. And I can't remember the quote exactly, so I'll paraphrase it, but it's something like, when you're young, you first like read for entertainment, and like, if you were lucky enough, my mum read me The Hungry Caterpillar, and it was a good book,
Classic.
it was a good entertainer.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you have to read because you have to learn. So maybe in like school, you have to read a particular book in a particular syllabus. And then later on in life, you actually learn to master a skill. So reading for mastery. So, hopefully how would I become the very best at this skill? So whether or not it's becoming a great marketer or a great negotiator or great in relationships or really good in business meetings or whatever it is you want to learn the skill on, is there a book about that? And so I think that like, that's kind of interesting. And what I'm noticing a lot is that, people learn obviously in very different ways, but there are also people that have not yet committed. And so if you have not yet committed, there's no real need to have to go and pursue the skill set. But if you've got a bit of commitment in your life where you go, I have to do this because I've bought the house or I've just got married or I've had the baby, often they can be that. And also too, purpose is a massive part, because some of our best clientele are probably not doing that at 60, 65 and 70. But if they are, that's Mick Jagger type stuff. But I'm trying to get you to think more broadly. You got to find a driver that makes you want to perform better for the hours that you're prepared to spend on your career.
Find the why.
Yeah, but a lot of people don't know that that's a tough question at some Cinecast. But if I asked you to go to your mobile phone and open up the photo section, tell me what you take photos of. And if you take photos of sunsets and sunrises and holidays, or if you take photos of classic cars, or you take photos of your kids, that's probably the stuff that you're really into. So do more of that. And so innately, the technology already knows. And so if you can tap into what the technology already knows about yourself and learn how to use that as a very powerful tool for performance, it's an awesome way to spend a life.
Do more of that.
Well, okay, great. So if you're not a real estate agent, what do I find you doing? For me, I might be on a motorcycle, might be going for a run, might be going on a holiday, might be going to a comedy show, might be catching up with a dinner with you over, with a couple of mates. But like that style of thing, so do more of that. And that's what a lot of people, become a little bit dry, is that they kind of lose that edge, that most of the great ideas happen when you're not in the saddle doing the job. So get out of the saddle more often, so that when you're in the saddle, you can be better as a performer. And really, I think is it a science or an art what you do? And some people definitely practice art, but when you find something that works, double down on it, turn it into a system. So it's a replicable process over and over and over again.
Now, and do correct me if I'm wrong, but the direction I think we're going in terms of this, and you said like that, the challenge that some people aren't coachable, right?
Yeah.
There's an inherent difference, the difference between motivation and discipline. I mean, we speak about that a lot.
Yeah.
Motivation, discipline, when you feel that you have to have some element of motivation to go out and do something versus being compelled to do it.
Yeah.
Internally compelled. I do a lot of. I'm a big jiu-jitsu guy, right?
Yes.
And when you're first starting
by the trophies.
Off, now when you're first starting off and you get beaten up every single day, you've got to force yourself to go. Like, it's very easy to lose that spark and that love really quickly. You've got to force yourself to go up and do it. So when some people aren't coachable, and you gave the example of, sit me down and sit someone down, go through that frank and honest feedback. You have to have that level of discipline to get that feedback that you probably don't want to hear. Everyone wants to be told they're perfect.
So, but if you know you're going into that, then you know that I'm expecting to get some resolve on how do I improve that. I think that was like, how do you like to be coached? How do you like to be mentored? How do you like to receive feedback? Like, do you want it publicly? Do you want it in front of everyone? Do you want it in front of the whole school assembly? Or do you like to just do it on a private drive in a car or a quick walk around the corner where we go and have a coffee where we say, hey, this is how you could improve? And by the way, when I give you feedback, do you want me to tell you what you've also done really well? Yeah, like because I know that sounds funny, but like if you just keep on getting hammered all the time, then you can start to think that like, oh, is everything all right?
Yeah.
Mate, you actually did this really well. But have you thought about this? And so what I often say is, hey, Liam, if I could show you a way that you could earn an extra $1 million on a day less a week, would you be open to receiving that advice?
100%.
Okay, great. And how would you want me to tell you? Do you want me to tell you in the moment? Do you want me to tell you on Friday mornings between 8 and 8:30? Do you want me to tell you whilst we're going for a quick drive or over a coffee? Or do you want me to use some language that says, hey, permission to coach? And what I mean by that is, you go, oh, Josh, not right now. I'm trying to put this big deal together, or something's happened at home, so I'm in a bit of an emergency state. No problems. Let's catch up next week about it. And it's just about how you're selling marketing. I reckon we can probably find you a slightly better way on that. So I don't give you anxiety about it over all weekend, but then you can come back, hey, I'm ready for that. Let's now talk. And I don't think that humans are all that good at doing that. And I think it's Jefferson Fisher, wrote a great book recently. He's the lawyer in America, and he's just like, hey, Liam, I'm going to tell you this because I know you can handle it.
Yeah.
I just love that language. But hey, permission to coach, not right now, or yeah, now's good. Like, how urgent is that? Do I need to know in the moment because I'm about to, maybe go wrong? Or is this something that can wait, when I've got an appropriate time, when I'm emotionally and physically in the room? Yeah, because I don't have something else coming at me, which I might not have been aware of, to give you that feedback. And I think, great teams do that. It's not me to provide the coaching. If you're lucky enough to have a son or a daughter, they might provide you coaching. Hey, mum, dad, you just seem really uptight right now. Oh, yeah, you're right, honey. I need to smile more, And some of the best advice comes from a 4-year-old. So remember that.
So looking at the role of leaders in the real estate industry, a lot of this coaching comes from that internal mentorship that you would receive, especially if you're a junior agent.
Yeah.
What are some of the worst ways of communication that you've seen?
Oh, just raising your voice, but just being quite abrupt, potentially delivering things in a rude way, in a public way, making someone maybe feel belittled or like literally, and not actually probably opening that up. So to be a great coach or a great leader, you probably question to coach your way there. And it's interesting because, I'm very lucky. I get to walk into lots of different rooms, and often I'll say to someone, oh, hey, can I get everyone here in the room to put their hand up if you're a leader? And often most people will look to the sales manager or the business owner or the director, and they'll have their hands up. But I said, but hey, let me change the question. Can I just get you to put your hand up if you're a leader in your own life? And most people put their hands up, and a couple of people are currently texting their partner, honey, am I allowed to lead today?
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to get you to think about, everyone can be a leader. And if a business is really set up with a great platform, then it allows people to go and do that. And I think that, I've had the chance to work with some pretty amazing CEOs in this industry. And, there's a couple, but one in my mind that I really think on this situation has been a guy by the name of Damien Hackett at Place up in Brisbane. And, Damo just says, hey, look, if I give people a set of values, it allows them to make decisions quickly. So respect, innovation, community, and excellence are their values. So what does respect look like? If I said, hey, John, you're like, well, Josh, my name's actually Liam. Like that's the first conversation. Innovation, how could we make this better and faster and easier for consumers? What would we do there? Community, how do I make everyone feel involved? So if you're the top performer, but you don't turn up to training, you're making everyone feel like, well, I don't need to go to that. And so you're breaking community. But if you're turning up because you might add some value, and that's good because do you remember you had day 1 too, right? And someone else who was a top performer gave you some advice that let you become that, and kind of people forget that. Then the next one after that is that then excellence is like, how do we make sure that we do that? And I know we're going to talk a bit about today about compliance and some stuff that's been going on in industry, but like excellence is always a really important thing, because how do I deliver excellence in the next email, the next SMS, the next phone call? And how do I make sure that I don't inadvertently bruise a consumer? So like I was saying to you off air, we've just been to Perth recently, and it's a booming market. I kind of call it the Dubai of Australia right now. Properties are selling in 8 or 9 days. Yeah. But the thing about it is that what's the opportunity that presents? If you're getting 50 people at an open home, you get the chance to build one of the biggest consumer databases of all time.
Yeah, 100%.
But some are not realizing that. Because they're like, I just got to find the offer and get it sold. Hang on a second. Work with the buyer, find out if they're a seller, find out if they're interstate, find out if they're already owned in WA. Like, even though there's a lot of volume, this is your chance to build a big database. So when and if the market does change, you've got heaps of buyers to ring and say, hey, if you didn't get one then, I can sell you one now, and it's probably better value than it was 6 months ago.
Also have a lot of potential future vendors in that.
But people don't realize that because, and so that's like, I think, a really important thing, like think that leadership can be demonstrated by the newest person in the organization, by the receptionist, by the head of sales, by a salesperson, by a property manager, by someone in leasing, because you do the best that you can before you send the email, before you pick up the phone, smile before you dial, basic stuff like that.
Now, I don't want to make people feel disappointed.
Yeah.
My questions
Yes.
that I was going to ask in this podcast, you and I had a chat through them before we went on
Yes.
air, just so I didn't, ask something that
You can ask
might be
anything
too
you
left
want, my
field.
friend.
Well, and that's what I was thinking. So,
Yeah.
and this all sounds really good. So, not to pivot too much, but there is a move to a lot of people joining the coaching, mentoring, training space. What's the biggest misinformation that you've seen over the recent few months, years, that people have come into this space that you want people to unlearn?
I think that the foundation that what is a real estate agent, and are they are they great people? Are they not? And I think that there's a lot of media, type conversations around, underquoting, overquoting, position on quoting. I feel bipolar, as a real estate coach in that I go to Victoria. Shortly there'll be some new legislation maybe about potentially having to disclose a reserve price 7 days before an auction. We expect probably here in New South Wales, as we're recording today, that we'll probably receive a statement of information. I go to Queensland and we just don't quote. Now, the interesting conversation about that is that legislation is one way how to deal with an issue, but so too is about thinking about what are some transparency measures that changes the game. I think that a really incredible brand to watch, led by Thomas McGlynn, and you would have seen him with Bresic Whitney, they do some really good data research, and I happen to be on their database as a consumer, and it's interesting because they will send out auction results every Saturday, and it will go to tell you what was the initial guide, what was the opening bid, what was actually the final sale price as an example.
That's great data.
And what was the difference between that, and was the guide revised throughout the course of the campaign? And in any weekend in Balmain, I can see that there might be pretty close to the mark, or hey, this was a bit of a boomer weekend because everything was 400 grand above the quoted price, or this was a weekend where there wasn't much sales, and then the guides were actually being reduced. To me, if you're really clear as a regulator, that's a really good piece of innovation.
It's a great model,
that literally that you could work really closely in hand with the portals to collect that data and that information to present transparency. And then you could go on to an agent's profile and see if Josh says $1 million, there's an 85% chance it's probably going to go for $1 million, but there's a 15% chance it'll go above 1.2. Yeah, because the data, we live in that world. So transparency and radical transparentization of what we're doing is actually really easy to do. But instead, we want to have a play with systems that are imperfect. And, the foundational idea is that, you can't look to many other international models to see the success of auction because Australia and New Zealand are the biggest auction markets in the world. So we are the ones that do it. So okay, great. If you think about quoting, well, that also has to do with pricing transparency. Where's the government requirement on the published square meterage rate of what land sells for in an area, or the published square meterage rate of what a fully renovated house sells for in an area? And what it's left is that you have to be quite analytical and mathematical to get that approach. If you want to clean up, start thinking about ways that you can make it so it's almost foolproof as a part of that. And I genuinely think, by the by, that when you look at it, what people are really wanting to do is to say, hey, this is what it's going to sell for. Can I afford to pay it? Yeah, okay, great. If you think the problem is pest and building reports, make it mandatory like it is in Canberra, that it's available from day one. And make sure the consumer doesn't have to pay for it. So there's smart things that legislators can do to actually provide a better industry as opposed to a heavier industry. And I think that's a really interesting conversation. I'm all for national licensing. The fact that you have to do CPD points in every single state, territory, and is crazy. That should be something that should be more mandatory. But you know what? It would take that's just the benefits of the states and territories as opposed to having a full federal licensing body. But these are different conversations. But what I would say to you, I'm from an era where I watched my dad and my grandfather, and they had to be seen as what we've got to call the pillar of a community to be the local real estate agent. And I love it because I go anywhere, and I was sitting on a random place. I was in a bus in London doing the sightseeing tour. First time I ever went to London. And I was sitting with a mate who was from London. He goes, mate, I'll take you around. We'll show you some stuff. And this bloke taps me on the shoulder, and I'm like, oh, hey. He goes, oh, I'm XYZ. I'm like, oh, yeah, you've got that real estate agency down in Tassie. And he goes,
so
yeah.
Funny.
And he goes, and I said, how do you know me? He goes, mate, from the coaching videos and whatever. And what you realize is that this industry is filled with tremendous people. And I think that every year media more broadly publishes some sort of story that real estate agents are the second or if not the lowest, in terms of all the careers in how consumers trust and think and feel about them. But just hang on a second here. If you're in a competitive situation and 30 people want to buy a property and 10 turn up and 3 actually bid on auction day, mate, there has to be 29 people that are potentially disappointed and 2 that are bitterly disappointed that they've missed out because they're not able to meet the level that this particular buyer is wanting to buy. And that buyer could have intricate interest, owns the house next door, has done very, very well out of a roll-up, like a Chemist Warehouse has been some of the big buyers more broadly recently. And so there are other things that you can do. The problem is that governments often look at demand side to improve that, believe it or not. And I think that you're seeing a lot of the stats come through that first home buyer, home deposit schemes have seen significant and ramped up demand. And
Heaps.
I think the number is like maybe 1 million in Canberra as an example, when like they were telling me down there that like you have like 30 buyers at $999,999, but you hit $1 million, everyone evaporates. And so if a government wants to get really serious about that, then it's got to go and have a look about what it actually does to supply, how it foundationally encourages people to move out of some of the bigger homes, as their family have gone and now they can move into that, and starting to think about, decentralization and some of the bigger and broader topics. But as a country, are we ready to invest? And that's a completely different set of conversations.
Now, looking at 2026 and something that we've highlighted before, especially with the Perth discussion, Perth listings are quite low at the moment.
Yep, on fire.
We got single days on market. We've had a new generation of people coming into the industry.
Yep.
So it's a pretty competitive time.
Yep.
What is going to separate in the next 12 months? And of course, we've got all the government policies that are lingering around as well. In the next 12 months, what's going to separate someone who's going to win, that's going to grow, from someone that's going to flatline?
Those are all in on relationships, understanding your market dynamics. And so when you're starting to think about what is your growth engine this year, so is it average sale price, is it volume of transactions, or is it fee, or is it a good combination of all three? And no matter whether or not you work with someone who's new or someone who's the best in the world at what they do, they need to make those considerations. We did the work with Alexander Phillips today for his 2026 plan, and we sat down and we went through those things, and is it going to be average sale price, or is it going to be volume, or is it going to be fee? And we chose one or two of those. But you get very intentional about like which is the growth lever.
Even those top performers,
of course,
still go through the basics,
you
set
have
themselves
to.
up.
There's only one way to play the game, but then there's stylization and around how we're going to make sure that we, if we get a better lead source, maybe that leads to a better fee. If you start to think that all of your sellers sold with you here, but they moved here, maybe they move to a slightly higher average sale price in a market that you don't normally serve, which is the next suburb. And that's how you could start to build some market share with that. So business is all about strategy. And if you can get strategy right, you're going to win. And a really good example of this, McDonald's globally had like a strategy last year called Keep the Drive-Thru Empty. And if you're driving through and you got the kids in the car and you got a bit of dad guilt and it's 40 degrees on a Saturday afternoon, you're like, oh, maybe I'll just get them a quick ice cream from Macca's. And you're going to pull into the soft serve machine if it's working. Then there's 16 cars in the drive-through, you don't go in. But if it's empty, you drive through. So they worked that out. So they changed that they would do delivery of food in the car park as opposed to the drive-through. And the rumor is it's circa 1.1 billion extra in US dollars in sales last year. So get really clear about what your strategy is. And I think that's like, know the conditions of the day. I pretty fair skinned. I'm not sure if you notice that's a tan, but it's quite white. But what I'm trying to get you to think about is that I don't often go out, particularly in afternoon sun. That's just not my thing, or without appropriate protection and coverage like a hat and some sunscreen. But there are others that will, and so what I want you to think about is that know the conditions of the day and then know what you would do. So like literally if it's not your thing, and that's, I think a lot of people, they do really well in a good market, but when a market condition changes, they don't adapt fast enough. And that's a thing.
So what are the conditions of the day?
Well, let's have a look at some of the indicators. So that might be a good thing. So how many properties are currently available for sale when you go to the portals? How quickly are they selling? How many buyers are you getting to an open for inspection? What's the average days on market for you versus rest of industry? And then the next conversation is that then I want you to think about what's the government doing to drive particular segments, like so first home buy deposit schemes versus over 55s, put your money into superannuation. So understand where the drivers might be and then learn how to apply. So if I'm in Victoria more broadly, I'd be pretty concerned with the land tax stuff that's been going on for the last couple of years. I don't understand how you have population growth, but traditionally very slow growing or even potentially declining prices still. So something's not right, but it is respectfully a government policy that's causing its growth not to happen. Yeah, you go to Gold Coast and Brisbane, you could call it Olympic mania. You could also just say we've got an aging population and arthritis doesn't thrive in warmer conditions. So when you go to, keynote brands that are very, very clear about what they're doing, like a Kolochi, for example, on the Gold Coast, they're very, very aware of the type of product that they will sell to people that are coming from the southern states. And so they'll be very clear that in guiding their future developers about the type of product that they should be building for that type of clientele. So, sometimes there's longer term trends, sometimes there's definitely short term trends. But what we can say is that market cycles are 7 to 8 weeks now, not 7 to 8 years. You will see potentially this year maybe 1 or 2 interest rate increases. Maybe it's stable. Who knows? And just because interest rate goes down doesn't mean a market comes back, and New Zealand's seeing that only just starting to get to recovery now. So I work in lots of different markets and lots of different price points. But what I always say, if you stick to where the average sale price is, you probably do pretty well, because that's where the majority of the transactions are. And don't be too good to sell something that's a little bit of a cheapie. And also, too, don't be afraid to have a couple of expensive ones on as well, because often the people who walk through that will bring a trade in. So learn more about your market and its dynamics, and what you can do personally to be really successful in that.
So you mentioned that market cycles change every
7 to 8 weeks.
7 or 8 weeks. What habits can we leave in that?
Yeah.
What habits can we leave in 2025?
Probably don't try to predict what's going to happen.
That's a great one. Actually.
All I know is that the market I've got today is the market I've got today.
I mean, it's so good because it's something that everyone changes their prediction so quickly. You know,
Sure.
It was only, I can't even remember our last podcast, but I wouldn't be surprised if we were predicting more interest rate cuts.
Yes, yeah, sure.
And now look what it is 12 months later.
And so what I'd say to you is that that isn't not hard to predict, though, on one reason is electricity prices. And I saw a headline the other day, they think electricity prices are going to go up 24%.
Like looking at the futures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what the government actually did to get inflation down was that they gave electricity rebates.
Yeah. It's artificially lowered.
So from that point of view, when they come off, if the rest of the economy hasn't shifted, and I'm reading a book about the Chairman's Lounge. I think it's the story of Qantas and what they did through the course of the pandemic. And one of the biggest inflationary drivers has been travel. So because airlines put up their prices by circa 45%, that's been one of the biggest drivers in inflation. So if you don't encourage competition in the sector, Rex, a new entrant like Qatar Airways, then guess what? You're not going to lower those prices. And so all I'm trying to get you to think about, there is some stuff that you can predict if you're a little bit smarter, but you also need to understand about seasonality and how things actually go and really understand your market. So if you're selling, beautiful properties that are maybe weekenders and really good stuff over summer holidays, man, absolutely. Like lights out in December, January, you make plenty of money. But if you're a normal mum and dad stuff, outside of school holiday zones is probably where you're going to get the majority of your open for inspection attendees. But you'll learn it, and most real estate agents will be able to tell a market it's changed this weekend or by next weekend based on those number of people coming to an open home, particularly on a hot listing that's just come to market.
Now, we've seen a bit of there's been a well-being and a mental wellness rise, a lot more focus put on this in the industry.
Yeah.
What's the role of pressure, uncertainty, tougher conditions? It's all going to come together to be a bit of a challenge for a lot of agents out there. How can they navigate this?
Yeah, so I think that like some of that, you made me think of saunas and ice baths, and it's kind of like the trend.
Yeah.
And then the
other 5
side
a.m. runs.
Well, there's a bit of that too. But what I would say to you is that more broadly, what's changing society, and so let's have a look at something, right? So you go to Instagram, I go to Instagram. What do we type in and what comes up? So I did this study, right, and I was watching a Gary Vee thing at a conference in America, and he said, okay, great. So I did it. So with one of my mates, Steve. So what we did is that every day I consciously went onto Instagram and I typed in the word rainbows.
Okay.
Yep. And I wouldn't normally type in rainbows, but I typed in rainbows under my search criteria. And I liked a minimum of 3 posts containing rainbows. And then I forwarded my mate a minimum of 8 posts a day that were featuring rainbows. And then I started messaging him and I was saying, oh, hey man, have you seen any good rainbows lately? Do you want to catch up over a few rainbows? Right. Right. So it's quite random. My entire Instagram feed now is filled with rainbows and sunsets and sunrises.
How long does that take?
3 days.
Yeah.
Okay, so
short turnaround.
So what I want you to think about is that now think about that the feed is going to enforce your behavior.
Yeah.
So let's say, for example, that for the next, 72 hours, I want you to go into Instagram and I want you to go Sydney house price crash. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go on Instagram every day and I'm going to type in Sydney house price boom.
Yeah.
And within 3 days, our feeds will be filled with content that supports that idea. That has nothing to do with the foundations of demand, supply, cost of money, X, Y, Z. That's actually the way that people are programmed to think. And so what you got to realize is that what you scroll is your diet. And now more than ever before, expect that there will be some adversity, but how would we get our days on market to less than 20 when there's less buyers on market? And that would be grading listings, that would be sale methodology, that might be what you're doing around pricing as an example. How would I do this? And I think that that's a great question to get creativity regardless of the market cycle. So what has probably happened is that it's been the advent of social media, the move to mobilification, the always on world that we live in. And what you need to do is you need to have a really healthy relationship and boundary with that. So if you want to think about it, Gilbert Anaka, again, he speaks about it's like, visualize success. So if you woke up every day and you thought, okay, let's give me a couple of minutes. What are the plays of the day today? Where am I going? Who am I seeing? What is it going to be like? How do I be present in that buyer appointment, present in that market appraisal, that listing presentation? Who are the types of people I could call? What are the types of things that I could say? How would I motivate someone to go and do a transaction today? And then you went into the world with that level of energy. You will be incredible because the world is filled with people that can find problems, but are the people that are really valuable are always the ones that can do what? Provide solutions.
Now, you wake up in the morning, you think about how you're going to structure your day to win.
Yeah.
Sorry if I butchered that.
That's fun.
Where does the line come in with, say, impatience? Because I think that and not just the real estate industry, though I do feel
it's consumers in Australia, globally.
Yeah. How do you not get that impatience that you beat yourself up that you're not winning now?
But it's a trained skill.
Yeah.
Because what I got to get you to think about is that, like, do you learn more by winning or losing? And I think foundationally you learn more by losing.
I'm not going to do that again.
Yeah, but hey, that didn't work.
Yeah.
But what the smart ones do is they go, hey, that worked. Okay, I'm going to do that again. Oh, geez, that worked again. Yeah. Oh, now I'm going to do that forever until it proves itself not to work. And so whilst you're constantly over here trying to work out what doesn't work, and I think Ray Dalio talks about that in his book called Principles, what you're better to do is find out what works and go deeper with that. So I've got an idea for you, right? Right now, the people that are listening to this podcast, they're probably in a position that they've got the most past clients they've ever had. They've got the most past market appraisal they've ever had. They've probably got the best market knowledge they've ever had. They've been in the industry the longest that they've ever been. They've got the most resources that they've ever had. They've got everything at their fingertips. So how would I take these strengths that I've got and go and leverage them? So good example of that. Okay. So the industry will probably talk about some big bets this year. And I bet you somewhere there'll be some conversation about AI and its transformation. Okay, cool. How much did AI change your life last year?
A lot.
Okay. Well, in what ways, though, to drive your productivity, to increase your income? And so what I'll get you to think about, it gave me better shows on Netflix. And also, too, it helped me with my spelling. And it was good as a creative thinking partner. But what you're actually starting to see is that things are becoming more the same because the grammatical spelling stuff is all becoming the same, and now we write the same and your individuality is lost. Here's a different thing. What would actually happen if I said to you, okay, great, first Thursday every month, ring everyone who's ever bought a property from you in your career. Tell me what happens then.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Simple idea. Hey, Liam, it's Josh. Thought I'd give you a quick call. Congratulations, own your home for another year. How are things with you? How's the house? Would you be open for me to pop out, give you an idea on what it's worth? But that's not AI. That's called past clients.
Yep.
So what I would say to you, in a world that is confused, in a world that is chaotic, in a world that's always on, the thing that gets you through all of that is about building long-lasting and very powerful relationships. And the easiest way to build a relationship, meet with someone face-to-face.
Going back to the human.
And then be in a position, call them. And if there's something important, text them. Like, do a few things and be there. And I don't have to see you every minute of every day.
But we could catch up more.
But what I would say is that I don't feel like it's any different from when we left a year ago, in that literally you sent me an email, I replied, you asked this, I got you a date pretty quickly. Like things happen, like there's a level of respect and mutuality there. And if you need something, you should feel really confident to be able to come to me. So what I would say, relationships are the way forward. There are businesses that have built this into their formula for success. If you know any amazing women in your life and you ask them what their Mecca beauty loop ranking is. So they are level 1 or level 2, level 2, level 3, level 4. If you spend 1,000, you're level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. And if you're level 4, you get free merchandise, right? You do it at all levels. But what they've done is that they've got a customer ascension program based on that.
There's gamified.
Yeah, they've gamified it, but it's actually public.
Yep.
Really good businesses actually have that private. So, for example, we're in Sydney when we're recording this today. So, Maryvale, for example, is a very significant restaurateur, and hospitality and entertainment group. And there is a notion that they have a group of people that if they ask for a table at any of their restaurants, they'll get one. Whereas if someone who's only new to Maryvale, we're booked out. Yeah. And so, and in other words, they've always got space for their VIPs or regulars or people that have got a certain spend. So what they've done is they've provided a benefit. So we can do the same. How many of your clients have done multiple transactions? How many of your clients do you know that have got multiple properties? How many of your clients are actually landlords for the last 22 years? And what could you provide them? You know how you do your market report or your FY26 report? Could you give them a printed edition of that 2 weeks before it goes live to everyone else? Could you hold an investor night? Could you do an investor breakfast? Could you do something? So what you got to do is you got to, like, the industry is really good at R&D, rip off and duplicate. And when we learned that right the way throughout the course of COVID, and we had to learn it, like, and that's the best thing about our industry. Oh, how do you do an online auction? And everyone learned how to do an online auction at that point. But also too, if you want to be the one who takes hold of a market, you got to say, okay, great. What could I do differently through creativity that would allow people to go, oh, that's incredible. And you got to look for inspiration everywhere and go, what would I do to bring that into my world? So, look, markets can be incredibly difficult. There are also markets that are incredibly easy, but both practitioners still complain. Because the one who's going highly successful, oh, how do I keep up with all this? I'm so tired, I'm exhausted. The one who's, oh, geez, well, how do I do a deal? So whether or not you are wildly successful or not, I need you to be just the same.
Now, I think you actually addressed the next question that I wanted to ask, but I want to ask it anyway because it is quite direct. Now, is the obsession with daily habits sometimes masking poor strategy? And I would say, from what you said, kind of yes, because you're looking maybe for shortcuts at times rather than going back to the core element, which is that human connection, that emotional connection, that building that long-term personalized pipeline.
Yeah, so I would say simplify, don't complicate. So like most people think you got to add extra stuff. And I'm like, well, what can you pull out before you add something else into the process? And so if you think about structure and discipline, structure is what do we do, when do we do it? And discipline is do we actually do it? So, okay, here's some great examples of structure. Every day we have a daily directions meeting. Liam, welcome to our meeting. What's been listed today? What's been sold? What's been listed, in the last 24 hours, what's been sold in the last 24 hours, and are there any price reductions we need to be aware of? Now, why that's important, do we have any market appraisals or past clients that would buy that new listing? Do we have any market appraisals or past clients that would need to know about that new sale? Do any of those new listings now compete with our current listings? And does that recent sale, is that now just stolen a buyer who won't be bidding on Saturday? So that's market knowledge, expertise. 3 p.m. every day. How are we going? Is there anything that we need to do before close of business? That deposit hasn't been paid. We need to chase that contract up. They're good disciplines. Then start thinking, Monday, who are the best buyers in market? If you know that there are 5 buyers who want to buy $1 million houses, what should you prospect for? $1 million houses. And so don't go off randomly prospecting, like get really clear on that. You know, people go, I'm going to do every street in the area. Why? If you want to increase your average sale price, just do the expensive streets. So like, you got to really think it through. Okay, great. Tuesdays, who are my best sellers? Let's read through every market appraisal that I've done the last 12 months. As an example, I think Alexander said it on the podcast recently, maybe 700 market appraisals in his team last year, they listed 200. My first question is, well, what happened to the other 500? How many of those were divorces? How many were job relocations? How many were having a baby? So what I'm trying to get you to think about is that foundationally, there's a lot of like fish at your feet opportunity here. Wednesday, what am I doing with my current listings and how do I make sure that I get them back on track? Change marketing, change pricing, change sale method. And then on Fridays, numbers review, how are we going? So if I've got to get to 4 listings this month and we're on day 7, have I got my first one already? And if not, how do I change my behavior? If I'm at 6, geez, I'm going well, slow down the turbojets here, and adjust. And so what I'm trying to get you to think about is that, like, to me, that's like, it's not optional, daily directions every day, 3 p.m, Monday buyers, Tuesday sellers, Wednesday listing review, Friday numbers. They're just little things.
So in that sense, if you're 7 days and you haven't got your first listing yet, or you've got all 4, right? And you adjust, how much do you change your, not on the fly, but how much you amend your strategy? Or
quite quickly if you're at 0.
Yeah.
So oh my God, I'm in trouble.
If you've got what has been for the last decade a winning strategy.
Yeah. But you got to realize that I'm just not saying something that's getting people to want to go to market today.
Yeah.
So there's been a change or something's happened and I haven't got something that's motivating. So maybe I got to pick up a different call list because I'm not motivated by that. So I'm going to ring past clients or past market appraisals or archive landlords, or I'm going to do more prospecting in a particular street because I want to try to build market share there. And I think don't get bored with what you're doing, but also to realize that if it's not working, you need to shift strategy. And if you, I just won't let you make another call session unless you're getting some level of success out of it.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now, we have seen, and this is going to be maybe a little bit of a hard question, but government intervention in real estate does seem to be increasing. We saw just by the time this one comes out last week or 2 weeks ago, the government released its new kind of bad behaviour name and shame list.
Yeah.
Real estate is in their crosshairs. For right or wrong, it's in the crosshairs.
Because of housing affordability.
Yes, I would say that it is politically beneficial for people to have real estate in the crosshairs. What would you say to people still acting unscrupulously?
Well, like, you don't have a position in the industry.
Yeah.
It's pretty simple. Like, I think that, like, if you go back to my grandfather's era of be a stalwart of your community, like, be one of those types of people, compliance is not an option. At the end of the day, we've got lots of different compliance AMLs coming in later this year. That hasn't impacted the New Zealand market. They still sell houses there, so don't be worried about it. But there'll be some extra checks. And but the way that, we'll be given a set of rules by AUSTRAC on what we're supposed to do. But then there's going to be a way that that's actually delivered so it doesn't bruise the client. As an example, hey, look, Liam, I understand that you're going to be wanting to buy today. I'm just going to give you a quick one-page PDF on some things of the questions I'm going to need to ask you and some things that you're going to need to bring when you're coming to sign the contract, which is going to be, it might be proof of ID, and I'm going to need to understand.
I don't think people would be very surprised as well.
That's going to happen. Well, the bank already asked you, but also too, and by the way, I'm also going to need to ask you how you actually saved your deposit. Yep. Okay, great. So just so you're aware, that's going to happen.
Yep.
So like, that's a way of like still making sure that I'm 100% compliant, but delivering it a way that's palatable. So it's a pleasant experience, even though there's a requirement. I think that when you don't let people know that's what's going to happen, and then they don't have what they need, and then you cause issue, that's a problem.
Yeah.
So it's about getting ahead of it. I know this is off track, but it's a different thing. I bought a set of sneakers recently, and you wouldn't think that's a big purchase. But it's great. I bought the sneakers and fine, and I went home. And the next day an email came and said, hey, Josh, we really hope you enjoy your new sneakers, your new runners. What we thought we'd do is that we just give you some playlists that you can listen to whilst you go for a run.
That's quite cool. That's great. That's a good gimmick. Yeah.
So hey, if you're going to buy a property, by the way, here's a quick 10-minute audio to listen to on some things that you need to be aware of that have now changed in Australia about how you go to buy property because of the AML, as an example.
Yep.
So you can inform early, and information early is what actually makes you super prepared. So I think a little bit about that.
And you tap into their excitement.
Yeah, but also too, you're the guy that got them ready.
Yeah.
And that's what you've got to start to think about. The industry will come under pressure. In good markets, we always come under pressure about underquoting. In bad markets, we always come under pressure that, we told on is too much.
Yeah.
The reality of it is that markets are very dynamic. There are a lot of people that are doing some really good quality work here. What governments could learn the best is that literally you want a really efficient marketplace where properties can trade for the market price they are today, that they're supposed to be, right? But you need to understand, if you substantially pump demand but do nothing to assist in pumping supply, you will have price growth.
Yeah,
and
it's a natural function
the state and territory versus, for example, federal, you guys got to have a bit of chat together. And and I kind of like Dubai on this because they think, what does government do? What does government with private enterprise do? And what can private enterprise do on its own? So I think that that's a really good mix. What can the federal government do? What can the state governments do? And then what can the industry do together to more broadly actually produce a better quality industry? So that might be, for example, what is the benefit of a CPD training program and who should actually go and deliver that? Because when you actually have a look at the real world practical application, like the legislation doesn't actually tell you what an offer actually is. It doesn't define it. In addition to that, it doesn't define what you're supposed to say when there's two offers. It doesn't actually give a clear mechanism of what you need to do if there's a multi-offer situation in place. So solve that.
Yeah.
And solve the pest and building inspection up front if you think that the cost of what consumers are paying is a problem. And track the sales results like what Bresic Whitney were doing, because I think that's a really good example of transparency in process.
How can you get that done?
You subscribe.
Right. And that's
what they do, and I'm guessing here.
You're probably a VIP subscriber.
No, I'm not. Yeah. I'm just a normal person. But what I believe that they do is that they'll send people to auctions to actually go and get the detail. But a lot of the media reporting companies have done that for years. For example, back in The Age and the Sydney Morning Herald, most people used to buy those publications on Sunday to see the auction results.
That's right.
So there are definitely data warehouses that do a portion, if not all, of that job. But it's about partnering to get it together. In terms of unscrupulous behaviour, my dad would always say that in town every night or at the end of every year, there's a bus that leaves town with everyone who did the wrong thing has to get on and has to leave town because you don't get to stick around very long in a small country town doing the wrong thing. And I think it's the same level of conversation. Unfortunately, I genuinely believe that about 99.9% of the real estate industry is filled with tremendously amazing people who want to do incredible things. And then there's a few people that are very deliberately bending rules. Okay, great. Fix that.
Yeah.
But act quickly if you're in the position of being able to do those things. And I think that that's the big driver. just be great at what you do, live to the standards, set the bar, be the role model, learn to be at your best, help out other people. You're going to have a great career.
And I totally agree. I also, I did feel the need to ask the ethics and standards question because, and that's why I started off with, real estate is in the crosshairs, right or wrong, because it is, as you highlight, it's politically salient to do so.
But also too, it's a large amount of money.
Yes.
And I'm going to say there's a lot of control risks associated with that.
Yeah.
And we've seen that. How is the deposit paid? Is the deposit paid? Where does the money go? What actually happens with that? How does it land? The amount of money that, governments collect in terms of stamp duty is unbelievable.
Second biggest revenue.
Yeah. And so from that point of view, they've got an interest in wanting to get property prices to grow too.
Absolutely.
And to keep volume cranking.
Yeah.
So it's a partnership conversation. Doing the wrong thing deliberately is a choice. It's also to an education process that sometimes people are inadvertent. I was unaware. And that's actually okay. Give you a good example of that. I believe that the Privacy Commissioner right now is targeting the real estate industry.
They are big leagues. Yeah.
And one of the conversations that they're talking about is I think it could be things like a collections notice at an open home. So, hey, I'm going to collect your first name, surname, email address, mobile number because I'm going to call you about this property and to see if there's any other properties that could suit the requirements.
Yeah.
And I believe that also too there might need to be some conversation on when I collect the data, how will I dispose of the data and when will that be? And I don't know, I reckon that there would be a lot of estate agencies that would probably not be compliant with that.
100%. You can't just punch stuff on an Excel and save it locally. It's not how it works anymore.
So, but that conversation is that, well, that is a really good thing to do CPD on then.
Yeah.
So like that's the whole conversation. And this year it'll be AML and with some of those types of things. But hey, there's a difference. Hey, this is a new law and this is you got to comply. And here's a period of time to get together to make sure that you get to compliance pretty quickly. And that's great. It's a bit of a grace period, but there's a deadline date. It's got to be done by then. So I think that we've all got a great opportunity to do it, and we're really lucky to have the real estate institutes across Australia to assist in advocating the industry's position. And I think that governments are more than fair, but you need to have the types of people in power that want to make a more efficient and a better system, for those that are administrating it, but also to those that are living it out day to day, but also to helping consumers to achieve their dreams. And I think, building costs and building materials, there's a whole range of other things that you could go into.
I mean, with the compliance side and the privacy side, it is a challenging world to work in, and I know the legislation. I think it's as practicably reasonable.
Yes.
So it's great, but
it's
it is a case that if you do have someone's passport scanned on your CRM for 10 years ago and that gets hacked or leaked somehow, well, that's probably not reasonable. But that is for the courts to decide. Now, I don't think I always get someone as well read as you on this podcast, Josh. I think
you're the one with all the books, man.
I read a lot, but you and I read very different things. I'm just a history guy.
Oh, right, yeah.
I'm just a history guy, so I need to know what your recommended reading list is for 2026.
Look, I just think Gilbert and Arca, his most recent book, Unstoppable,
what's
I think it is
book?
from memory.
Unstoppable.
I think that's a great read. I got to see Gilbert speak at a conference in New Zealand recently, and he was exceptional. I haven't read it yet. I think it's coming out shortly. But Ben Crow is a great mindset coach. He's got a new one that's coming out, so that'll be awesome. He was Ash Barty's coach, and also to the Australian cricket team from memory. So he'll be really good. A completely different read. A good mentor recently wrote a book which was Lessons in Creativity, Ben Rennie. There's lots of different things, but what I would say is that why are you reading and what sort of stuff do you read is a great thing. And there are timeless classics, The Magic of Thinking Big, The Power of Full Engagement, some of that sort of stuff which are amazing. Cut to the Chase by Stuart Levine. There's lots of different things. But what is an important thing? If you don't like reading, you probably haven't found the right book.
100%.
So find the right book. Yeah. And I am a bit different. I have 3 or 4 books on the go. Yeah. So if I'm not feeling that, I'll go and read that.
Yeah. Well, I find people and to your point, people that don't like reading or can't read, it is because they haven't found the right book. And I found it's because they want to read the book because it looks good, or they want to read the book because someone else is recommending it. They want to read the book because everyone else is, and it looks flashy. Man, if you don't like it, don't read it. Find something else. And if you want to read about cricket, go and read about cricket, because also getting into the cadence of reading and getting that that attention span back, well, then in 6 months' time, you can pick up that flashy book that everyone else is reading, and you will have more of a capacity to now consume it.
Yeah, I think that the conversation is that like world's changed. You can listen to an audiobook, you can listen to a podcast, you can watch a video, you can be in real live, events. You can go and have a live conversation with someone, and we all learn in different ways all the time. But I can tell you that most people tell me they don't have much time, but yet screen time tells me they spend an hour and 48 minutes on social.
Oh, plus the
rest. So from that point of view, imagine if you could just carve out 20 minutes a day to improve a skill set that would change your life. And that's where I would come at you that once you read like some of the great books, of all time, then all of a sudden you start to realize that not every author is the same. And I think the conversation is that, the ability to have a disciplined mind and disciplined focus and disciplined action is the thing that will set you up for wild success.
And that you heard it here first. Well, first, I feel like you always drive that message home, but it is incredibly important. Josh, I think that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, lovely to be here, and congratulations on all the things you do for the industry.
Oh, thank you. That was speaker, trainer, and coach extraordinaire Josh Phegan. I think a lot of our listeners are pretty familiar with Josh, but go to his website, reach out if you do want to tap into his brilliant mind. But that is all we have time for today on the REB podcast. We'll be back at the same time next week. But until then, bye-bye.